if you could take a moment and go to thegrowingbanddirector.com to give at least $5 or $3 a month, and it helps the content continue to be created for you to help our profession grow. Let's go back to our scheduled episode. Welcome back to the Growing Band Director podcast here on Thursday, day 2 of Midwest. I'm here with Peter Blair from Exceclia Music. Peter, how are you?
I'm great, Kyle. Thanks for having me.
Beautiful. Tell us about your name.
Okay, yeah, it's funny. My real name is Blair Bolosky. Peter's my middle name. So when I started writing for publication, I just made the decision like I'm going to use my middle name and my first name just because Bolosky is so hard to spell, hard to remember. I'm like, yeah, I'll just go for easy. And so I answered just about anything. It's like, yeah, some people know me only as Peter Blair, you know, and some people don't even know that exists, you know, like.
Well, I was really happy to be able to meet you in person here this week because, you know, I've known your charts for a really long time, as people listening probably have. I just wanted to plug all my yesterdays because I talked to you about this yesterday. If anybody's looking for an alto feature, that's, what is it, a grade 2?
Yeah.
But yeah, it looks easier than it is because of the style and there's some key stuff in it, but it's like how would you classify it? It's like a contemporary.
Yeah, it's sort of popish, rockish, you know, jazz chords sort of stuff.
I found it's a pretty flexible thing. Like you could use it as it's not a standard tune, right? It's an original tune, but you know, it's clearly has the merit to be at a festival, but could also be used at like a pop event or.
Oh yeah, for sure.
If you got a little alto player you want to feature.
Yeah, those, like when you do a solo feature like that, I try and make the rest of the band parts interesting too. So it's not just like everybody's playing whole notes and
what's the key of the middle part of that? Because that's like the death of you. Like as B major or G flat or something.
Oh yeah, it gets weird. I don't remember exactly where I went though. I don't know what I was thinking at the time.
It's super cool. I love it.
Oh, thank you.
And then, you know, people know Groovin' Hard, like the original, and then Dave Bardoon has a grade 3 or 4.
Yeah.
3. And then yours is it a 1.5?
No, it's like a 2. Yeah.
Yep. That's one too.
That was a very popular chart. That it was fun. I actually talked to Don Menza several times, like as we were figuring out how to do the copyright and all that kind of stuff. And he was great to work with.
Was he a tenor player with Buddy Rich, right?
Yeah, right. Yeah. And I think he wrote that tune originally for Buddy's band.
And people don't know, like, that original tune is a pro tune with, isn't it a crazy sax solo?
Oh my gosh, I played that in college and I'm like, oh, you got to be kidding
What's your instrument?
I'm a saxophone player.
Okay. Nobody's perfect, so we'll give you that one.
I'm sorry about that. Well, I was actually in college, I was a clarinet major.
Okay.
And then I did I have a master's in saxophone performance.
So that's the way to go. Like learn clarinet and then play saxophone, right?
Absolutely. Yeah. Going the other way from saxophone to clarinet. No,
I have to cover these holes and what are all these pink.
That's a non-starter in that whole octave key. And it's not an octave key. It's a register key.
I have a good friend who's a pro sax player named Barry Saunders, and he plays great, but he calls the clarinet the misery stick because he just can't get around. How do I go like almost an octave in like 3 inches? Like, how do I, it's just, yeah. So teach your kids clarinet first.
Start on clarinet always. Yeah. I mean, if it's fine to start on saxophone and who knows when they're just starting out, if they're planning on being like, I'm going to grow up and play in a Broadway pit and I need to double on all these other instruments, you know?
I've just found so many great teachers insist that their kids double. So even finding simple charts where they can learn something to require them to learn clarinet or flute or bass clarinet or whatever.
Yeah, right. Exactly. Yeah. On the easier charts we do at Exceclia, like there's these optional parts. There's a flute part, a clarinet part, a horn part, and a tuba part. And a lot of times directors will say, okay, why don't you just figure out how to play the flute part on this one to an alto player or something? That's
great.
You know, so it works out fine. So they get some doubling experience where it's not like the end of the world if they can't play.
Are the tuba parts for the Exceclia charts bass parts or more trombone? They're like trombone.
No, they're their own thing.
That's lovely.
Yeah, it's like, especially in a swing chart, doubling the basses. That doesn't work at all.
Well, it's only cool if you have no bass player and a great tuba player.
Yeah, right. Exactly. Yeah, I do that New Orleans thing. No, we try and make sure that the tuba parts are like really not the fourth trombone because it doesn't make any sense. Like in the voicings where the trombones are so we try and make the tuba its own voice.
Yeah, that's awesome. I was actually literally writing out a tuba part for my wife's a middle school band director in our town, and she had a kid who was playing baritone and it was not working out. Really wanted to play tuba, and they're doing simple enough swing tunes where the trombones are kind of all together. But again, trombone 4 was a little too high. So I took it and wrote out, the root of the chord of whatever it was, or if the bass moves a little bit, put it with the bass on those hits.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's better for that kid. But yeah, those walking bass lines.
Oh yeah, it's like
Unless you have the killer player,
Yeah.
and then feature them.
right.
We were talking about how you have a lot of experience clinicking bands, and you've heard tons of bands throughout all your years. We were talking about kind of the pitfalls that a lot of bands have, and you jumped right to
The rhythm section.
yeah.
Yeah, and I'm sure that that's a problem for, I mean, all of us that are horn players. It's easy to gravitate towards that whole wind section, the saxes and the brass. Like we can deal with that easily, you know. That's like that's in our wheelhouse, you know, articulations and phrasing, and no, you're out of tune, and this needs to balance better and stuff. But the kids sitting over here, like in the rhythm section, I mean, chances are they don't have any experience playing that particular style that they're playing on the instrument they're playing. Like a lot of times I've seen kids who are classically trained piano players who are like, you know, playing the jazz parts. And the same thing with bass players. Maybe they're playing bass in an orchestra, which that's always cool. If you have an orchestra program and you can recruit a bass player out of there, that's awesome. And the drummer is, I mean, we were talking before, Kyle and I, about the parts that the rhythm section kids get are sometimes they need to be the best worked out, and they like are sometimes just afterthoughts. So when you're looking at charts, it's really important to make sure that when you're looking at the rhythm section parts, it's going to work for your kids.
And if it's overwritten, like sit down and learn it yourself and figure out, okay, what do they really need?
Yeah, right.
And if you don't know like a voicing that's just thirds and sevenths or whatever,
yeah,
find someone who does
Yeah.
and learn that. For like I speak from experience. My daughter's been playing piano for a long time and then jumped in our middle school jazz band right after COVID. So she was younger than most kids. But and of course my wife's doing blues and like simple tunes that they should be doing.
Yeah.
So I'm like, yeah, no, don't play this part. I'd write out a part for it. Just 3 and 7. Let's just do that. And then the next year we added the 9.
Yeah.
And then now she's like, that's in the left hand. And now we're doing like the miracle voicing in the right. You know what I mean?
Oh yeah.
Just like that slow progression of things.
That's a beautiful way to do it. And like I'm talking about rhythm section parts being, a lot of times they'll be overwritten. Like the piano part will have like all the voicings of the horn parts like written out. So the piano player's like playing everything the horns.
If the band's playing it, don't play it. Just sit there.
Gosh, I mean, it would take the piano player a long time to figure out how to work all these voicings and complicated, you know, hand positions and stuff. And they're going to spend hours practicing, and then you can't hear it because the whole band. I mean, just don't write it that way. I try to discourage guys from doing that.
In my experience, that's one of the things that I do with my piano players. Even with our most experienced ensemble, we go through the chart at first, and I'm like, you see all this? They have it. They're like, great. I don't play that. Nope, you don't play that.
Yeah,
because the kids I have right now are awesome kids, but they have to work. They're not just great players.
Yeah.
So like they have to, okay, what do I actually have to work on? And what am I just going to be wasting my time on?
Yeah.
The rhythm section thing is so important. And if people are interested in more, I've done like 20, 25 episodes with all these people, like literally jazz piano voicings on this tune, like, and rhythm section, every instrument. We've done like multiple things just so like, how do you teach a drummer if you're not a drummer?
Right.
So we've tried to provide a lot of that for people.
Yeah, that's awesome. I would definitely check those out.
Yep.
And I've seen some of them, like, and I've seen a number of ones you've done with Terry White and some other guys, like doing the literature thing, and those are like really valuable too.
Literature, man. If you can teach the pedagogy of the rhythm section, and then we talk about improvisation and articulation, right? Like that's a lot of people, and I'm in this boat of like, okay, I hear that band, they're better than my band, but how are they better? Yeah. Like, I just can't quite tell. Usually articulation, rhythm section, solos, like it's one of those.
Yeah, absolutely. And those are like, because they're all, I say to people all the time, like a grade 1 concert band piece is way different than a grade 1 jazz
like
piece.
At a grade level, right?
Oh,
like,
at least. Yeah. I mean, because it's just automatically harder. The chords are more intense, and there's one on a part usually in a jazz ensemble piece. And the articulations are basically, a lot of times they're like reverse of what you'd expect in a concert band, or, you know, like a classical sort of counting situation.
Can I go on my soapbox for a moment?
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay. So for people who are doing jazz bands, I mean, I don't want to tell people what to do, but if you don't have a lot of experience, under program. So do simple enough music that they can do it really well.
Yeah.
So they're not going to the festival. I learned this the hard way. You're not going to the festival playing what you did in college. Like, don't try to. It's not a good thing.
Yeah.
Make it under program, but also do standard tunes a lot of the time.
Yeah.
Like there's a place for All My Yesterdays and all these other great charts that are new charts that are originals.
Yeah.
But like they also should be learning about Duke Ellington and Count Basie and all of the great players throughout, because then you get to go, okay, not only are we listening to this Exceclia band recording of this tune, but we're also going back and listening to Lee Morgan.
Yeah, right.
And then once in a while, we'll do this. Okay, this is a simple chart, but you might have 5 horn players who are ready for the next thing. So we're doing this right now. Terry has a chart, which is not with Exceclia, but we're still going to talk about it. It's called Midnight Creeper. Okay. It's a new tune, but well, it's not a new Lou Donaldson tune, but it's a new tune that he's just done. And it's like this great B flat blues, very simple. It's grade 1. But there's the Lou Donaldson solo is 3 choruses of totally playable stuff.
Oh, wow.
So we found it online.
Yeah.
Put it in a Sibelius, sent it to Terry. I'm like, if you want it, we got B flat, E flat parts, whatever. So we get to the solo section. Before kids blow on the blues, we have those kids stand up and do a little soli and then the whole band's listening to it. And we love doing that. I mean, you know, the 1992 album with Arturo called I Remember Clifford. I don't know if you ever heard that.
Yeah.
And that was the first time I ever heard, all right, here's an old Clifford Brown solo. Let me harmonize it and then play.
Yeah.
So we've started doing all that. You know, there's a Rick Stitzel chart on Solar. We took the Miles solo and like just had a bunch of our kids play that. I mean, it's a great way to kind of get a transcription within a chart.
Oh, absolutely. That's a great idea. I have to figure out how to do that.
Well,
that's a really good idea. That whole super sax thing of like taking all those bird solos and like, woo, would have thought of that.
Yeah. And in my experience, because my kids are not super experienced, right? We have some good bands, but I'm not working with like top line experience. And the kids, I don't even harmonize them anymore.
Yeah.
It sounds cool, but like I want the kid learning the cannonball solo.
Yeah.
Not the tenor part to the cannonball solo.
The third harmony part or something crazy.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. I did that once with Sack of Woe, which I think is an Alfred chart, but I looked up the cannonball, you know, because somebody told me once the first chorus or two is usually pretty playable.
Yeah.
Now after that, all bets are off.
Yeah.
And if you can just find the PDF online, then all it takes is a little bit of score work to put it in and let your kids play it.
Yeah. Oh, that's a great idea.
Yeah.
The like talking about transcribing, like when kids are into it, the alto player that I always started kids listening to is Paul Desmond.
Yes.
Just like every solo you could take and make a complete piece out of his improvised solo. It's just like so well crafted and thought out, and you know, through and through it, just like he keeps molding ideas around. Like I've taken some of his solos and just taken them out and made like bossa novas out of those things, you know, just the solo parts. Like, wow. Yeah.
All it takes is just a little bit of looking and
yeah, right.
Yeah.
And if you're gonna start with that, like you mentioned Miles Davis, like some of those solos are are pretty reasonable, you know. He was just like starting to figure it out himself, you know. So it's like that's a good place to start.
So if you're doing a standard tune, listen to the original recordings.
Yeah.
And then as you listen through the solos, first of all, you're educating yourself when you're listening.
Yeah.
And then you go, oh wait, my kids could do a little Google search. Oh, there it is. You know?
Yeah.
It's I usually do it every year or two with a tune and the kids.
Yeah, that's a great idea.
Like it. You just put it in the solo section.
Yeah.
And it works.
I gotta steal that. Yeah.
I contributed something to Midwest.
There you go. I appreciate that. Yeah. Yeah, this convention is always great. If you haven't been here, I would strongly encourage you to come to Chicago in December. It's fun.
Yeah. And I just found that the people here just want to learn. They just want to grow.
Oh, yeah.
Just want to get better. The clinicians, the people who we like yourself, we see your name on the music all the time, but then you actually talk to them and it turns out they're humans.
Yeah, right.
They're nice. They're here because they want to be here. And
exactly.
They love band like we all love band.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely.
Beautiful. Thanks for being here.
Oh, yeah, Kyle, thank you.
This was fun.
I appreciate it.
Yeah.
Thank you so much.
Sponsorship for today's podcast is provided in part by Austin Custom Brass. Austin Custom Brass is the largest Adams brass dealer in the United States. Adams Brass makes some of the world's finest trumpets, flugelhorns, trombones, euphoniums, and tubas. Find out why some of the most renowned musicians in the world play Adams Brass, like many of the brass musicians from the Rotterdam Philharmonic Orchestra. Trent Austin, founder of Austin Custom Brass, is also an Adams artist. You can call Austin Custom Brass today at 816-410-0826 to learn more about Adams Brass, or visit their website at www.austincustombrass.biz. Austin Custom Brass is located in Kansas City, Missouri. You can visit their shop to try Adams Brass instruments and many other brands of instruments, or you can call them online, have stuff shipped to you. They work with an entire band program. You can do bids in the PO process and fit within your budget and all that. They are an amazing resource for brass players. Check them out. Exceclia Music Publishing is proud to sponsor the Growing Band Director podcast. Exceclia Music Publishing provides new music for concert band, jazz ensemble, solo and ensemble, and books for all levels and occasions, including a specially curated and robust selection of music for your contest and festival performances. A variety of overtures, marches, and lyric works included on numerous state lists await. Select music that's perfect for your contest and festival needs at excelsiamusic.com. That's EXCELCIA music.com.
But I understand, and you're not the man to talk to about that.
The world does not need more Kris Berg stories.
No, but you need more.
Welcome back to the Growing Band Director podcast here with Kris Berg. Not just the Chicken Man.
No,
you do other music that is not just the chicken.
Yes.
However, people know you as the Chicken Man. Chicken
yes.
Shawarma is going to be episode, not
you
episode,
think so?
chart number 39.
That was lunch the other day. I'm not sure that lunch was worthy of a chart.
So we're here at Midwest Day 2. This is Thursday. You had, was it 2 groups are playing your charts?
I had 2 groups yesterday play my chart.
Yep.
Yeah. So I heard Bartok Takes the Train, which is a new chart by Exceclia that is based on a Bartok piano melody.
Yep.
A short, easy piano melody. And I just kind of treated it like a jazz head and turned it into a big band chart. And then last year's chicken chart, Soul Chicken.
Yeah.
I heard that yesterday afternoon. So yeah.
If you just put in Berg chicken or whatever, you'll see all the honestly, the charts are great, but the names are just as good, you know.
I still have a list of about a dozen names, and people walk up all the time with ideas.
So I don't remember what episode number it was that you and I met. You were down in Texas and I was in Maine.
Yeah, we did.
But if people actually want to hear more from you after this, they could go back and listen to.
They
it's
go back
like in
and
the
find
115 to 20 something like.
Oh,
that.
there's so many of them.
It was called
podcast.
It was called "Hangin with My Peeps," which is
I wrote that. Yes,
of course you did.
Yesterday I had somebody who said, "Man, I love that chart. I'm going to come right up and buy it." And I said, "Great." And then as I'm walking away, I go, talk is cheap. Oh wait, I wrote that.
Yeah. One of the things I took away from that podcast that I've used a lot is that bass players. It helps if your bass player is stubborn.
Yes,
because you said that. They insistent on the time basically is what it was. And so because sometimes you have a kid who you think might not be a bass player, but like, oh, they're pretty stubborn. That's a trait.
That's not a bad trait to have. Yeah.
They're not going to get pushed around.
No, musically stubborn, not emotionally stubborn.
But sometimes they go hand in hand. So.
Well, they do. Yes. I don't know what you're talking about, but yeah.
We were talking about something that as a band director, I need to hear and people need to hear. And you jumped right in with dynamics.
Well, I've been doing a lot of clinics this fall and a lot of clinics last spring. And I always talk to, I'm talking about jazz bands. I always talk about big bands as being a team sport. It's football. Now in Texas, I joke that big band jazz in Texas is a full contact team sport, but big band jazz is a team sport. It's the good of the many outweighs the good of the one. So a lot of times I'll see bands that just play heavy and they don't play balance. The excitement of the energy and the dynamics is there, but it's just heavy and out of balance. And I think part of the reason is because let's pretend I'm the third trombone player or the second. Well, yeah, because trombones have so much tubing, they can be loud, really loud. I'm the third trombone player. And here on my part, it says fortissimo. And I'm just got this big grin, fortissimo. Yeah. And I play fortissimo. He plays the fortissimo. That is his fortissimo. The sad part is that he's got a lead trumpet player who doesn't push that much air, and their fortissimo is completely hidden. And so trying to teach the kids that dynamics are a team concept. It's a group concept. You see fortissimo, great. What is fortissimo? Well, if all the horns are playing, fortissimo is the lead trumpet. And you still have to balance to the lead trumpet. Now, if the band at that point is not loud enough, then it's up to the band director and the lead trumpet player to get him to play louder. Yep. So then you get to play louder. And
can I just divert
please.
Into the concert band side of things too?
Yeah.
Not that it's not about that, but sometimes they in their world, they are playing forte And you might have to teach them, well, okay, I would like it to be more, maybe for you, this is double forte. Like I think in my percussion section, my percussionists know if you're playing timpani or chimes in the percussion section, you are the loudest two of all of it, because where you are playing the chimes in the back of the band and they're resonating right in your face, you're like, these are really freaking loud.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
But on the podium in the hall, it's not.
Yeah.
So my kids know, okay, I have to over exaggerate that. Well, with trombones, and it's the same thing with shortness of articulation. Like you're an octave down from the trumpets.
Yep.
You need to be shorter. Yep. Third trombone needs to be louder because the D on fourth position is not going to ring like, you know, the upper. So it's like, yeah, I actually validate, like you are actually probably playing what you think is forte, but because of X, Y, or Z, I actually need you to give more.
Yeah.
You just explain it easily. And I found that helps sometimes too.
Oh, absolutely. And, you know, and I know like before we started recording here, we were talking about drummers being too loud. I actually usually, at least over the last year, I typically find that drummers are not loud enough because a kid sitting at a drum set playing mezzo forte, to him, this is loud. And this guy wants me to play louder, and he wants me to play louder, and he wants me to play louder. You know, I challenge, typically when I do clinics, I am challenging the drum set player to make me tell him to be quiet. And especially if they're kind of new to it, they can't get to that point yet. And they think they're covering up the band, but they're not. You know, if they're doing just a like an and a two pop with the brass, they're not covering up the band by playing bing, ding, ding, ding. They're not covering up anything.
Yep.
And they just make the horn sound so much better.
What was I going to say?
I don't know.
I just had a trumpet player moment. Oh yeah. If you were to come and watch one of my jazz rehearsals, I'm 70 to 80% of the time on the drummer.
Okay.
And the rest of the band is 20 to 30% of the time. Because if the dynamic is right, the style is right, the fill is right, the kick is right, the and a two is 4/5 of the way there already.
Oh yeah. Yeah, absolutely.
And we both know Brad Jahomsky, great writer, great drum set player. He always says that the drummer is the weatherman of the band.
I like
don't know
that.
if you heard this. So it's not only does the drummer have to play as soft as you want, because a lot of times I was doing an honor band 10 years ago, and I'm like, I'm trying to get them to play softer. They won't. He was in the audience because his kids were there as he was the middle school teacher. He's like, do you mind if I say something? I was like, please. He comes up. He has the drummer, close the hi-hat, hold it with the left hand, and then play it literally as soft as you can. And all of a sudden, the band was just playing over the drummer.
Right.
But once you fix the drummer, the band naturally does that. And I found that fixed a lot of things. And on top of that, they have to play the dynamic. The weather forecast is because they tell you ahead of time.
Yep.
So the forte is here. So give me the two bars that lead it into it, or the decrescendo. So it's not sudden.
I heard he's actually here. I bumped into him yesterday. Tony Garcia.
Yep.
And I heard him do a clinic years ago where he talked, he's a horn player. He's a trombone player. So he could say this. He was telling the drummer, basically, the horn players over here are really insecure people. Again, he can say that because he is a horn player. Yep. As a bass player, I don't say that.
How are you?
But he said,
Kyle, nice to see you. You're going to be around? Beautiful. Let's be around. Love it. Great.
So he was telling, basically, but what he was telling the drummer is that the horns have two needs that they don't even think about. One need is they have to hear themselves, and the other need is they have to hear the drummer. So if they're supposed to play really loud and you don't, they'll play softer because they can't hear the drums anymore if they play as loud as they probably should. The other need is they have to hear the drums. So if they're supposed to play really soft, or they have to hear themselves. If you're supposed to play they're supposed to play really soft and you don't, they'll play louder. So a drummer who doesn't play dynamics can, in that respect, turn the band into mezzo forte and make you a dynamic, because dynamics aren't about how loud you can play. It's about the contrast between your loud and soft. But if you got a drummer that's playing all mezzo forte, the band's going to play all mezzo forte. You'll never truly get soft. You'll never truly get really loud, and everything just ends up in the middle. And then the band just ends up sounding heavy and boring.
I heard in 2 years ago, Lincoln Center Jazz Orchestra was in Portland. And then I think the whole band got COVID or went and did or something, and they had to cancel it, and then they redid it. So last April, we heard them live. That was fantastic. Yeah, I think I would ask somebody. Yeah. Heather has the glasses. She's right around there. She could, yeah.
We're the information desk.
yes, I don't know anything. My wife can tell you that. What? Oh,
He has.
so
Oh, go
when
ahead.
they come out and play, and I knew it was going to be burning, like
Right,
obviously.
yeah.
And by the way, that same day, our director of music, Stu Crew, reached out to Winton and said, "Hey, would you stop by? We're having a jazz rehearsal." I don't know if you saw that, but like,
I didn't.
and all of a sudden we found out an hour before rehearsal, oh, Winton's coming. And the kids found out, and then we had to do a wind ensemble rehearsal right before. And I'm like, you think I'm going to get my kids to focus on this piece
Yeah.
we're doing when?
Yeah.
So then Winton comes in, it's like crazy, and it's like he was just so gracious with.
Yeah.
He's like, I've been in so many band rooms. Oh, and I have this wicked funny kid. Shout out to Orgy if he's listening. He's one like we just have these kids who are just different from everybody else. So everybody lines up for pictures with Winton after, right? So like everybody's got it. He literally drives away from school, goes to CVS, prints the photo. The next morning, 7:15, he walks in the band room, puts it on the bulletin board. There's a picture of Winton and Orgy right there. That's it. Anyway,
I thought you say you drove to CVS, came back in 15 minutes, got Win to sign it.
that would be even better. And I think he gets that stopping at schools thing, just the passing on the language, like from Clark Terry, that whole, like, you got to be out there and it's an oral language. But anyway, we went to the concert that night. And what struck me about the Ellington band, the Jazz Lincoln Center band, was how soft they played.
Yeah. Like
they played some loud, but I mean, we could have a conversation over their band half the time. So acoustic, so soft. And of course they're so ridiculous, but that just hit me now. Every time I hear a great big band, I'm like, yeah, they're not quite as soft as considered.
Yeah. Well, and I grew up listening to the Kenton Orchestra. I got to see Kenton's band 3 times, and the 10 brass and the tuba and sometimes double baritone saxes and things like that. And that to me was like the loudest band ever. And yet Stan would talk about the fact, well, part of the reason we're the loudest band ever is because we can also be the softest band ever, and there would be moments where that band, you could just like whisper and hear yourself talk to your neighbor.
And this is a fantastic message for people like me who have small bands.
Yeah.
My bands are always under 50 at a time, especially if you got a marching band of 30 wins. Like, you can make great music, but don't try to play forte for 40 bars.
Yeah.
You just can't do it.
Yeah.
But if you make a good sound, you're right. You're looking for contrast. So if you want them to sound louder, don't try to play louder. Try to play softer.
Right.
Because they will be able to play louder, but it also sounds louder because the softs are so good.
Well, and one of the other things that I say a lot when I'm doing clinics, especially this last year, is I talk about, to me, dynamics have an attitude. So if you're playing fortissimo, you're going to have a greater attack and aggression than if you're playing piano. It dictates a certain style playing. And there are times where I have to tell players, I want a piano approach, but I need the volume more mezzo forte. Or I want you to play mezzo forte, but I want you to have the aggression that you would have as if you were playing fortissimo. I just don't want it to be that loud here, because typically as musicians, horn players, especially young horn players, if it's loud, they're going to be more aggressive. And then you ask them, well, hey, can you play that more mezzo forte? I don't want that loud. Then all of a sudden the whole style changes.
They stop the air.
Yeah. And the articulation, aggression, and all kinds of stuff. If I want you to continue to play in a piano, nice and soft kind of concept, I just want more air, so that it's kind of like we're listening to an album and we just turn the volume up a little bit. But the articulation.
I have a teaching tip that every kid can relate to. So remember the last time you were in the grocery store and you were pushing the cart and you hit your mom in the back, you hit the heels, and she wanted to scold you. So you thought you were going to die, but didn't want to do it loud enough for anybody else to know. And she would turn around and she would whisper your name.
Oh yeah.
So loud, or whatever. You get back, right? That.
Yeah.
Imagine your parent doing that, and they're all like laughing because they're all troublemakers. And you say, okay, now can you play it like that?
Yeah.
You go, da, da, do, da,
yeah,
da.
Exactly.
It's a great way to take their shame from childhood and put it into their band.
I like that. I can actually use that. Stan had a saying where he said, when we play soft, we still play intense. It's kind of like you're at a party and you see a guy across the room hitting on your wife and you just whisper at him, but yet, and I can't say what Stan said.
Yeah, please don't.
But
family show.
But he would, you look across the room and he said, and I would say something to that guy and I'd be mouthing it barely audible, and yet it would hit him right in the middle of the forehead so hard. like, just
Yeah.
get away from my wife, but I like yours better because the kids can relate to that more
Yeah.
than somebody hitting on your
Also, somebody like you and I who are fairly bald, right? I can say put it right on
Fairly?
the head,
fairly bald.
put it
Thanks.
right on our forehead.
Look, let me blind out your camera here.
Beautiful. Kris,
You
thanks
just
for
haven't
being here.
accepted it yet.
Oh, I'm bald for sure.
No, I mean, you haven't gone
No,
the full Monty.
I haven't. I'm good.
Hey, man, always. I love working
been
with
good.
you.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Say hi to the wife and kids.
I will.
All right, bye.
She hates the wife, by the way.
Oh,
So
she
if
does?
she hears this and she's
Okay,
gonna
sorry.
scream at you.
Sorry. Say hi to Crystal and the kids.
Yep. The only reason I can do anything is because of her as a teacher and a wife.
I get that.
There you go.
Yes. Perfect.
Marry up.
Yes.
We sincerely appreciate you taking your valuable time and listening to the Growing Band Director podcast. Your students are very lucky to have a band director like you. If you have any suggestions for episode topics or think you have an area of expertise to share on a show with us, please reach out. If you enjoyed this episode, don't forget to subscribe. And if you want to help spread the word, please give us a 5-star review and tell your band director friends to subscribe as well. We're available on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, our YouTube channel, and wherever you listen to podcasts. Thanks for listening to The Growing Band Director. See you next week.